Okay, this week the government are planning to ram through the Residential Tenancies Amendments bill, and they have guillotined the bill in what is clearly an attempt to prevent any proper oversight or scrutiny of this bill that is going to lead to dramatic rent increases for private renters on top of the already unaffordable rents that are driving an unprecedented housing crisis in this country. And it is very clear that the public are not really aware, and the government don't want the public to be aware of the very, very far-reaching implications of this bill, and that it is a bill which the Minister in his speech, if you looked at him, he highlighted in the second stage debate last week, made absolutely clear that this bill is about trying to ensure that rents don't fall behind. That's what he said, that rents should not fall behind. So the government are dancing to the tune of property speculators and investors and corporate landlords who are profiteering from the housing and homelessness misery that huge numbers of people are facing in this country, and from the extortionate rents that people are being forced to pay. And despite the government saying that the security of tenure elements of this bill are an improvement, in reality, if rents are unaffordable, we will see more people in housing crisis situations, people less able to find affordable rental, which is already trying to find a needle in a haystack. That situation is going to get worse, and the housing crisis is going to get worse, only to the benefit of property investors and speculators. But the fact that the government are trying to ram it through is indicative of the fact that they know how serious the implications of this, and they don't want the public to know. For that reason, people before profit have called a protest, a short notice, an emergency protest tomorrow, to ring the alarm bells, to highlight what's going on, and to make sure that this bill doesn't go through without a shot being fired. We're writing as we speak to other party leaders on the left, urging them to join the protest and to mobilise people, because we believe there has to be a fight against this bill that is going to make an already disastrous situation in terms of the unaffordability of rent and the housing crisis even worse than it is. On a similar note, directly after this press engagement at 12 o'clock, and I just urge the media to go, the Affordable Ireland Coalition is being launched outside the door, which is a new coalition. It is essentially, it's a relaunch of the Cost of Living Coalition, with many more groups and organisations. All the left parties in the Dáil have signed up to it. Trade union organisations, student union organisations, disability advocacy groups, and many, many others coming together to respond to the ever-escalating cost of living crisis. We'll see, yesterday we saw record increases again in grocery prices, so absolutely crucifying working families for the basic thing of food in this country. And of course, huge profits being made by the supermarket chains, in particular, at the expense of massive hikes in the cost of basic food items. But we're seeing a similar affordability crisis on housing, on energy, on food, on many, many things, driving up the cost of living. And so the launch of this coalition is absolutely critical, and its first mobilisation will be on the 28th of February around the issue of an emergency payment, winter payment for people with disabilities, and about demanding a cost of disability payment. So the Affordable Ireland Coalition is doing it in conjunction with many of the disability advocacy groups. So there'll be more details about all that and who's involved just directly after this, and I hope the press will attend that. But this is the beginning of a very serious attempt by the parties of the left, student unions, trade unions, to begin to mobilise people on the streets against the escalating cost of living crisis that is affecting huge numbers of working people in this country.
So this week I'll be raising in the Dáil how Official Ireland treats victims of gender-based violence. So we've seen a report that the Gardaí have doubled the number of Gardaí who have been suspended, and much of that is related to gender-based violence or sexual misconduct. That the Army have 8 cases going on right now. But that is a complete underestimate, because I'm dealing, for example, with a case of a woman who was abused by an army officer over a long period of time, and just contacted me a couple of days ago that she wasn't informed that the hearing took place. All of the charges related to her were dropped, weren't covered at all. So I'm fully convinced the Army, again, I've raised before, isn't subject to the Victims Directive, is not keeping people informed, despite the highlighting of this by Natasha O'Brien and many others. Also, the shocking, well, not shocking to many of us, but news that the DPP doesn't prosecute thousands of cases of reported gender-based violence. Now, we have the highest level of reported violence against women and others, but not prosecuted. And we need to talk about the DPP. I've raised this with Micheál Martin. We saw it in relation to Nikita Hand. We saw it in relation to Becca Clark. Absolutely massive, credible evidence that they had been raped, and yet the DPP wouldn't take the case up. It really is an insult to anybody who goes to the trouble of reporting a case. I'm also going to be raising a case of a UCD student who was sexually assaulted, a medical student who was raped, and who subsequently had images shared around that, and just really horrific, in WhatsApp groups of medical students. And the way that UCD handles this issue shows that we don't have proper safeguarding by, that's the leading university in this country. So I'll be raising that later on this evening in the Dáil. And it really is, so many people are contacting me from all around the country, and it just is a glimpse of the way that victims and survivors can be treated. I also just want to mention again, we would call on Micheál Martin not to visit Trump in the context of, the horrific descent into fascism that's happening in the US. So obviously there is a case of the Irish man who was being detained by ICE, James Culliton, and our thoughts are with him, but they're also with all of the thousands who are in detention, including, I've raised with Micheál Martin, the children who are in modern day concentration camps that ICE are running. And now the argument is that, he'll raise this when he goes. There's no way in the wide earthly world Micheál Martin's going to raise that in the Oval Office, right? Let's be clear. Micheál Martin hasn't mentioned ICE at any time. When he's asked about it by all of us, he diverts to something completely different. He talks about Maduro, which is not what he's asked about. But also he's never mentioned the Epstein files, and we all know that not one powerful man has been held to account over the Epstein files. Maybe in the UK somebody will be held to account, but none of the people who carried out the acts. And Trump's name appears there, more times than so many other people's. And the Taoiseach has to consider that. Rosa is going to be organising a protest at the Taoiseach's office, handing them in some of the information about the files, just in case he didn't read them. And if he does go, is he going to raise these issues? Lastly, just want to mention for 1 minute, I just learned that the passenger cap at Dublin Airport is going to be lifted by this government. That has implications for my constituency, where we have very close to Dublin Airport, and we have flights which create a lot of noise disturbance for residents, night flights as well. So we're going to potentially see flights at all hours of the day and night. But it's also bad for the environment. We should be cutting aviation, not increasing it. And it's also bad for decentralisation. We don't need to be centralising everything in Dublin. And the rural TDs who jump up and down about this issue, when actual policies are made that impact centralisation in this country, they do absolutely nothing about it. So that's something that we will be taking up and arguing against.
Today is International Online Safety Day, and we're announcing that we're going to be using our private members' time, which is Wednesday, 3 weeks' time, to bring at second stage our bill to turn off the toxic algorithms promoted by the social media companies and which spew misogyny, pro-eating disorder, pro-self-harm, hateful material at people, with no choice being made by people, in particular at young people, and our bill would turn off these algorithms permanently for everybody under 18 and turn them off for default for the rest of us. And there's going to be a very important question for the government, which has talked the talk from time to time when it suits them on the issue of social media, but has so far failed to walk the walk. Will they support this bill in 3 weeks' time? Will they free all of us from the spewing of toxic material at us, and in particular, will they act to protect children? Secondly, to restate the case that Micheál Martin should not be going to the White House. Seamus Culleton's testimony from the horror of the ICE camps is just another very good reason why we shouldn't be going. He's one of a whole number of Irish citizens being taken by ICE. We know that an Irish grandmother was held for 5 months by ICE, and that's not to speak about all the others. We know the record in terms of the bullying behaviour, the kidnapping of Maduro, Celia Flores, the killing of 100 people, the threats to Greenland, the attempts to tear up what is left of the United Nations and replace with a personal board of peace. They're all reasons why Micheál Martin should not go to the White House, and to agree fully with the point of Ruth, that if anyone thinks that Micheál Martin is going to raise any of these things in any serious manner, I mean, even just look at, he was asked about this by Christina Finn today on the way into government buildings, would you raise the case of Seamus Culleton, and just managed to kind of waffle on about legislative process in America. I mean, or watch what he did last time. He'd already been to the White House. What did he do? He praised Donald Trump as a peacemaker at the time, and for his commitment for peace at the time when he was funding a genocide. He laughed along whenever Trump described the housing crisis as a good problem to have. He didn't raise any objection when the word Palestinian was used effectively as a swear word by Trump. The final point to say is, obviously we're coming up to by-elections, just 3.5 months away from by-elections. People for Profit is standing in both. We're standing down in Rook in Galway West and Ono Canavan in Dublin Central. We think they're both very, very strong candidates and will perform well in the by-election. This is a crucial opportunity to strike a blow against this government of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and to keep the momentum behind the left and behind the idea that we can have a government without Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. We're going to be pursuing the issue of transfer pacts, which goes beyond just people generally saying they should transfer it up and so on, into a more concrete pact. That's what we want to see in both circumstances. But within that process, and publicly, of course, we're going to continue to emphasise that as it stands, we are the only people who are saying we wouldn't go into coalition with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. We were disappointed. Obviously, we work very well with the Social Democrats on many issues. We'll be joining a protest outside together in 1 minute time. We'll be on the same side in terms of the residential tenancies bill and so on. So we work together on many issues, but obviously we were disappointed to see Holly Cairns still saying that they're open to talking to Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael after the next general election. We think the left needs to go into the next general election offering a clear choice. You can stick with the establishment, you can stick with those who represent the landlords, the developers and so on. You know what you're getting if you vote for them. Or you could vote for these other parties who commit not to put Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael back into power, not to repeat the mistakes of the Labour Party and the Green Party so many times. But that's obviously something we'll continue to discuss with them and others over the coming
How can we maintain diplomatic links with the United States to advocate on behalf of the likes of Seamus Culleton and others that have been captured by ICE if we're going to cut our trips to see Trump? I mean, how do we maintain that relationship?
Ireland obviously has diplomatic relations with the vast majority of countries in the world, but we don't go and give them Shamrock on the day of St. Patrick's Day or a national day. You know, this is not a question of diplomatic relations. This is something special. This is bringing the White House to the centre of our national day, and it gives political capital to the recipient of it. It allows them to greenwash themselves, to present themselves as a friend of the Irish. And you cannot be aware of what is happening in the world in terms of the actions of Trump externally and internally, the murder of American citizens, the detention of thousands and thousands of ordinary people in America, the bullying behaviour around the world, and not think, well, I think if anyone's aware of that, you should take a stand, and this is a very obvious way that we can take a stand, and it doesn't contradict with the idea of having diplomatic relations.
Undoubtedly, if the Taoiseach were to snub Trump in a way and not visit the White House, and how do you say that would harm and damage diplomatic relations with the United States?
I think it would send a signal to the world that I think it would be an international story. I'm not saying it would change Trump's policy, but it would be an international story of someone standing up to Trump. And I think there's very, very many people around the world who precisely think that if you can't stand up to Trump now, after everything that's happened over the past number of months, past year or so, when are you going to stand up to him?
I just want to come in on that. I think it would be welcomed by huge numbers of people in the United States, very possibly the majority of people in the United States, who are increasingly horrified at what Trump is doing as he's sending, the modern-day Gestapo into American cities to harass, arrest, and terrorise American people. And far from us suggesting that by not going to the White House and celebrating our National Day with Trump, that we should break relations with people in the United States. No, we'd be very happy if Neil Martin or other representatives went and engaged with and celebrated Patrick's Day with the protesters in Minneapolis, or for that matter, went down to that place in El Paso to indicate their opposition to it and showed solidarity with the people who are victims of Trump's policies. I think that would actually strengthen our long-term relationship with the progressive forces in the United States, who increasingly are horrified about what Trump represents.
Does it not have adverse impacts, though, on how the Irish are treated in America? Have you seen how Trump reacts to these types of instances?
What, you think it could get worse than them locking people up in modern-day concentration camps? I mean, it's obvious. Trump doesn't give a damn about the Irish people. He doesn't give a damn about people of colour, of immigrants, and he doesn't give a damn about ordinary Americans. I mean, he promised he was going to solve the cost of living crisis in the United States. That continues to get worse. He is a tool of the billionaires, of the people who profit from all this toxic material on social media, and increasingly he's attacking his own population. So we want to align with the progressive forces of the United States, not with Trump, who is really a danger to the world, including his own people.
We're all getting a hurry up to go outside.